welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. The film that I will be discussing is Widows. So, Widows is a 2018 neo-noir heist thriller film that's based on the 1983 British TV series of the same name. So the film is directed and co-written by Steve McQueen, who's known for projects such as 12 Years a Slave and Small Axe. The film is co-written also by Gillian Flynn. I hope I'm saying it. I think it's Gillian Flynn or Gillian Flynn. I'm not sure. Hopefully, I'm not mispronouncing the name. Gillian Flynn, who's an author known for Gone Girl, which was adapted, I believe, into the 2014 film that starred Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike. So the film stars Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, and Elizabeth Debicki. Here is the synopsis. A police shootout leaves four thieves dead during an explosive armed robbery attempt in Chicago. Their widows, Veronica, Linda, Alice, and Belle, have nothing in common except a debt left behind by their spouses' criminal activities. Hoping to forge a future on their own terms, Veronica joins forces with the other three women to pull off a heist that her husband was planning. So the film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8th, 2018. It was released in theaters on November 16th, 2018. It had a production budget of $40 million. Dollars. In terms of box office, it made over $75.9 million dollars worldwide. It opened at number 5 domestically with over $12.3 million. Dollars. It was beaten by films including Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes Against Grindelwald, Dr. Seuss's The Grinch, and Bohemian Rhapsody. In terms of critical reception, it has a 3.6 rating on Letterboxd. It was nominated for four satellite awards, including Best Motion Picture Drama. And at the time of this recording, it is available on demand, so check your local provider. All right, let's go with First Discovery. So, I remember seeing trailers of this movie at the time, and I was completely sold by it. And I eventually saw it in theaters. I think it was opening weekend. I saw it with my brother. And yeah, I really dug this movie. Especially since like at the time this came out months after Ocean's 8, and that movie was a huge disappointment, not just as like part of the Ocean's franchise, but just as a movie on its own merit in terms of having female led crime movies and all that stuff. But with Widows, I quite enjoyed it at the time because it was quite gritty and showed that, like, oh, women can do similar things that the men can essentially. And I guess, like, rewatching it now, I still appreciate the movie. Even though, like, it's questionable in terms of the heist aspect of it, because I would say it's more of a drama than a heist movie. I would say this has heist elements because definitely it deals with the life of crime for various reasons. But I would say, yeah, this movie like is enjoyable as a character piece. I would say, but if we're talking in regards to like the action of it all, it might be underwhelming on that aspect. All right, let's get into the highlights. So I really dig the cast performances overall. Viola Davis as Veronica. I mean, Viola Davis always delivers with essentially every performance that she gives in various films and TV shows. Yeah, like her character goes through the ringer in regards to her mourning her husband Harry, which is played by Liam Neeson, because she often thinks of like their intimate moments together, but also to the downside of their relationship, especially when it came to them losing their son Marcus, because he essentially got killed by the police when his character got pulled over. dealt with racial profiling. Her character goes through a lot of the emotions and all that stuff. So, yeah, in terms of Viola Davis, she delivered with this performance. Also, too, I want to highlight Elizabeth Debicki as Alice. Yeah, she did a phenomenal job with the character because her character really also goes through a lot, not just in terms of losing a husband, but also to dealing with the abuse of not just from her husband, played by John Bernthal, but also too from her mother, played by Jackie Weaver, where the mother kind of forces her into doing sugar dating, which is quite fascinating with how that is displayed in the movie. She essentially tries to learn how to navigate on her own, especially when she had to essentially deal with people trying to control her on what to do and being treated like garbage. Essentially, there was that moment when Veronica slaps Alice for not doing her job, but then Alice slaps her back because she doesn't want to be told what to do because she's tired of being mistreated, and that was, I would say, quite a big moment for her character. So good on Elizabeth Debicki, I would say, for this performance. Also, too, I want to highlight Michelle Rodriguez as Linda. This is quite a different role compared to the roles that she typically does, at least of recent, mainly with the Fast and the Furious franchise. Those movies are fun. Here, like, it gives Michelle Rodriguez more to do with this movie, not just in terms of the physicality aspect in regards to the heist, but also to with the emotions that the character goes through, where she has to raise the kids alone, and she learns that the husband was being scummy in terms of gambling their store away, essentially. And yeah, there was that moment, I believe, when her character kisses the guy she was trying to get info on the blueprints from. That was quite an interesting moment there at that scene. But yeah, I would say it's a good Michelle Rodriguez performance, at least of recent. Also, too, I want to highlight Liam Neeson as Veronica's husband, Harry. I would say this role for Liam Neeson, he doesn't just display like the physicality aspect of the character, but also to dealing like with the the different, I would say, personalities of the character, because his character is quite shifty. Because I mean, of course, he portrays his how could I say, like, not co-workers, but the other husband essentially left them to die. Essentially, he blew up the van, which is quite insane with that. But also to the fact that Harry had or has an affair with Amanda, whose husband was one of the people that got killed in the van. And that made me question, because Amanda had a toddler, and made me question, does the kid belong to Harry? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, that was quite an interesting turn for the character, and also to the way that he tried to kill Veronica at the end. It's like, wow. Just makes you like questions like, wow, like, who is this guy? It seems like he's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve his goals, and doesn't really care about collateral damage and all that stuff. It's just insane. It's like, makes you wonder, like, was he like this the entire time, but prior meeting to Veronica, or did this happen after the death of his son Marcus? I mean, who knows? But yeah, it was quite interesting performance from Liam Neeson. Also, too, I want to highlight Colin Farrell as Jack. So his character essentially is trying to run for alderman, I believe. He's running up against Jamal, who's played by Brian Tyree Henry. And with Jack, he comes from like a life of privilege, obviously, because his father was in politics, but of course his health is declining, and essentially his with Jack is kind of like forced to step in essentially, and it's clear that he does not want to be a politician in terms of dealing with the headaches of that job, but he clearly enjoys the benefits of being a politician. And he does some shifty stuff throughout this movie with Jack. And he has an interesting moment, I would say. It's like after when he leaves, it was like one of those public events. I forgot what it was, but he has like I would dub to be the hot mic moment when he just like lets it loose and shows that his character is an undercover racist essentially, where he'll treat others with respect publicly, but privately it's like whoa, like it's rough. Like because he said at one point these people are killing each other. He tells that to his assistant in the car. It's like insane. And the way that that shot too is like a tracking shot. You don't see them in the car, but they're clearly in the car. And I'm like, wow, that's quite interesting there. And lastly, I want to highlight Daniel Kaluuya as Jatem, Jamal's brother. So it's clear that with his character does like the dirty work in terms of Jamal's like criminal activities, and his character is quite scary, quite intimidating. Um, in that scene when he is questioning the gang members that failed to protect Jamal's money from being stolen, like the way that he goes up to them is just like, wow, that's scary. He eventually does kill them, but wow, like he's quite intimidating in this movie. So yeah, a good job to Daniel Kaluuya on that front. But I would say everyone else like did a great job with their performances in this movie. So also too, I want to highlight. It shows that yeah, the characters they're people. So I previously covered Set It Off, and I've mentioned that I liked how with that movie, with the women, they are treated like people essentially because they have like their own issues, and which leads them to you know robbing the banks essentially. While here, like in this case, it's clear that they're forced to do it by Jamal. Well, mainly Veronica is forced by Jamal essentially to do what they have to do essentially to get out of it. But wow, but I think that it just shows that with the characters here, there's more like shades of gray than being black and white. Now, obviously, like with the villains are villains in this movie, but yeah, it shows that like the people are flawed. Essentially, they have their ups, but also too their downs. So there's that. So as I mentioned, yeah, with Jack, like clearly, he doesn't want to be in politics, but yet enjoys the life of politics in terms of the benefits. Because I guess he has Harry do stuff for him essentially, but then Harry was planning on robbing Jack essentially. If we when we saw like with the notebook and the plans that he had, but yeah, I find like it's interesting on that aspect. And also too, like with the women, with our widows, like it shows that they deal with their grief differently. So with I would say out of like the women here, Veronica keeps thinking about Harry the most because clearly they were quite close, at least in her view, they were quite close because she often thinks of intimate moments where they're either in bed together or where they're like embracing each other in front of their window at their penthouse. So yeah, she misses, I would say, her husband the most out of the three. Because yeah, with Alice, it seemed like she doesn't miss her husband Floric, that's his name, because he was very abusive. But but yeah, she kind of like has to quickly move on as her mother like forces her to do the sugar dating, and that relationship she has with the guy that she dates is quite interesting. And yeah, and eventually with Alice, she is able to become more independent as the film progresses. And with Linda, with her, like she, has to raise the kids on her own. At least she does have like her mother-in-law, but they're clearly not getting along because the mother-in-law blames Linda for why Carlos is dead, even though it was Carlos's decisions that led him, to his fate. But yeah, which is messed up. Yeah, that she had to lose the clothing store because of Carlos. But but yeah, like she's able to make it through the day, like with the help of Belle, played by Cynthia Erivo, because she babysits Linda's kids, and then eventually Linda has to rely on her to be recruit for the widows as they try to do their heist. Also, too, as a highlight, it deals with themes of racism, corruption, and social status. So yeah, it shows that there's a lot of people that are corrupt, mainly like with is it the Mulligans? Yeah, with Jack and his father there. Because at one point, I believe both Jack and Jamal were trying to get Reverend Whelan to endorse one of them, like for the election. I believe Wheeler told Jamal that he has endorsed Jack's family for years. But I think Jamal told him that, yeah, that the family is racist and all that stuff. And I think, yeah, at one point, I don't remember, but Wheeler, he decided he's not going to endorse either party because they both have baggage, essentially. So I found that was interesting on that aspect. And yeah, also too, with Veronica is interesting because it seems like she's comes from a life of wealth, I would say, out of the widows, because she lives in the penthouse. Her house is quite fancy. She has that cute, adorable dog that she always takes along with. So it seems like her life, at least on paper, seems to be a bit more comfortable in comparison to the other two ladies. But she had to make some sacrifices, especially when it came to Bash, who was Harry's chauffeur essentially, and she had to let him go because she was no longer able to afford him. And it's quite sad what happens to his character. I felt like with his death was not necessary because at the end though, like she was still gonna try to fulfill you know the obligation to Jamal. So I didn't think it was necessary for Bash to get killed by Jatem. Or I don't know if they did it as like a motivation tactic because it wasn't like she was slacking off or at least planning to double cross him. So I didn't really get that choice, but you know, I guess it happens. It happens. And also too, um because I've mentioned, yeah, in terms of scenes like when Jatem intimidates the gang members at the gym, like that was quite intimidating because like he forces them to rap because I guess he heard them rap or something like that, and then the way that he shoots them is like wow, 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 wow. And of course, like with Jack's hot mic moment inside the limo, like the way that shot is quite fascinating. It's insane though. Like that guy has so much hatred essentially, but he's trying to make himself presentable, for the people. I'm assuming it's mainly black people that live in the wards that he's campaigning for. But like, wow, wow, wow. And it's also nuts too that after like when his father got killed, Jack wins the elections. Like that's insane. But I guess I'm not surprised. But yeah, he ends up winning, which is nuts. And as like a final highlight, the dog, Veronica's dog, is adorable. Loved seeing the dog every time it was on screen. And I felt for the dog when Jamal was like almost like choking the dog. I was like, no, don't do anything to the dog. But yeah, glad that the dog, is safe. Now, in terms of lowlights, I want to talk about the marketing, because I just felt that the marketing can be a bit misleading in terms of the film's genre. So earlier I read the synopsis that I found on Google that mentioned that the widows, which included Belle, and Belle technically is not a widow, at least as far as I can recall, because when we see Belle, like she's a hairdresser, and she works as a babysitter for Linda. So as far as we know, like she did not had a husband or a spouse or anything like that. But but yeah, like I think I would say that this is more of like a drama than like an action movie. Yes, it has thrills. I would say it's a thriller on that aspect, and it does, and is set within the crime world. But I wouldn't say it's action heavy. Because in terms of the heist itself, like it's fine because they're just stealing the money from Jack's house essentially. So it was nothing like too fancy in terms of how that was set up. Like it was quite tense with that scene, I would say. But as like a movie itself, like maybe the heist could have been a bit better and all that stuff. But I would say it's more of a drama than like action heavy movie, because I think with the trailers would lead you to believe like it's very action heavy, and especially to the way that it's edited, but that's not the case though. Because I imagine with the original TV series, which I have not seen, but I would say that's probably more of a straightforward drama. So yeah, there's that. And I do wonder too, because of that, maybe it could be partly why in terms of its box office was a bit of a disappointment. But yeah, which shows that marketing is essential, because if you don't market yourself right, then it's not good. Also, too, as a low light, I wonder though, like with Jamal, what is he doing in terms of his criminal activities, which is unclear what it is. But is he? I'm just wondering, is it for the sake of where like he wants to have both ways, both be a criminal and a politician, or is it like one of those things where it was one of those last resorts that he had to do in order to fund his like political career? Because it seemed like in terms of the political career, he seemed to really care about the people, even though we don't see many scenes of it. But I do get that implication. So I just wonder, like, which one is it? Because clearly, like with his brother, does the dirty work, as I've mentioned. But um but yeah, I just wondered though, like with the money also too that Harry stole, was it savings, his life savings essentially, or was it, he did through whatever criminal activities he was doing and all this stuff? Because that those stuff were just a bit unclear. But also too, I wondered though of Jamal's fate, like what happens to him, because clearly, like he was threatening Veronica, like she had to give him the money or else. And then we see like after the heist, Jatem steals the money, drives off in the truck until the girls, getting to the car crash where he dies, and then they steal the money. And then we hear, I think it was on the radio, that Jack won the election and Jamal lost. and after that we don't hear anything. So just what happened? Like we know that he lost, but just what happens to him? Like, does he get exposed for this stuff or not? I don't know. I just have questions on that. And then also too, as a final low light with the Amanda's baby, did it belong to the late husband, or does it belong to Harry? Because since she was having an affair with Harry for who knows how long, does the baby belong to his? Is it his baby? I mean, we don't know for sure. Because I do wonder though, like I don't know how close the movie is to the TV series, apart from location change. But I just wondered though, like if uh, particular plot points were similar to the TV series. I don't know. But if you guys have seen the TV series, let me know. Are there any major like differences, or like also to which version do you prefer? I would love to know that stuff. All right, let's get into the trivia. So there was a lot of fun facts for this, so I'm not going to reveal every single thing. So apparently, Steve McQueen, he was thinking about adapting the TV series into a movie back in 2012 while he was working on 12 Years a Slave, which was interesting. And with the TV series that came out in 1983, so that was set in London, and I'm sure you guys know Steve McQueen. He's British, so he decided to move the location of the film to Chicago, as he felt that London no longer worked for a heist film. Because apparently, I guess Chicago at the time was beginning to make headlines for gun crime and police shootings. So I found that's interesting. Uh, Also, to Steve McQueen, he casted Elizabeth Debicki as Alice after hearing about a play she did in 2014 called The Maids with Kate Blanchett and Isabelle Huppert. He heard about the play and called her in for an audition and was so blown away that he offered her the role only an hour after the audition was over. Quite fascinating. So Michelle Rodriguez, so she apparently originally refused to play the part. During an interview with Vanity Fair, she said, "I didn't see the female empowerment in soft power. It was an all too familiar tale of poverty in an urban environment. I lived that life. Why would I want to portray it?" And then Steve McQueen ended up auditioning a handful of other actresses for the role. None of them worked as well as he thought Rodriguez could. And after meeting with Steve McQueen and discussing the film, Rodriguez eventually decided to take the part, wanting both to challenge herself and to reflect on the women in her life who she knew when she was growing up, whom she had always seen as weak. Interesting. Because I would say, like, yeah, as I've mentioned, this is a different type of role, at least in terms of recent, for Michelle Rodriguez outside of the Fast and Furious franchise. And and while working on the project, Viola Davis, she asked Steve McQueen what kind of wigs or extensions she would wear to play Veronica, and she was shocked when he told her to wear her hair as is. And she later remarked that this was a liberating experience for her and represent an important social statement. Cool. Also, too, the stunt scenes had storyboards, and the single camera operated by cinematographer Sean Bobbitt was used for everything except the explosion of the van. This documentary-like approach to filmmaking was taken so that the camera would respond to the action of the actors instead of the actors having to respond to the camera. The scene in the gym with Daniel Kaluuya's character, for instance, where the camera does a 360-degree turn around the actress, that approach wasn't decided on until the day the scene was shot. Interesting. And lastly, Hans Zimmer, who worked on the score for this movie, he briefly worked on the Widows TV series as an assistant to the show's composer, Stanley Myers. Interesting. Kind of like a full circle moment. All right. Lastly, should this movie be rediscovered? And I would say yes, absolutely, because I think as a character piece, it works. I think like the use of the themes that it covers, such as corruption, social class, racism, I find was quite effective there. I think as the heist aspect, it's debatable whether the movie works on that front. But I would say overall, like it's quite enjoyable. I would say with this movie, and the performances themselves are solid. So yeah, so check out this movie if you haven't already. All right, so that pretty much wraps up this episode. So you can find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Numphy Malloy. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. Visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to support the podcast via donation and look at exclusive posts there. Join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is a community group on the official Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where you can interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. On Spotify, you can answer the feature poll, leave a comment, and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser, you can leave a review and rate the podcast. You can submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form on our link tree to be featured on a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.